Hey, all right, Shalom. Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai, Ba'ashim Kakadash. I want to say double honor to the apostles and the elders, a great millstone for teaching his word and truth, and sincerity for ruling well. And salutations to my fellow Akim across the four corners of the globe, preaching and prophesying in the name of Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai, as well as believers. Shalom to also to the Israelite foreigners, meaning Israelites that are scattered amongst the different nations that look like these other nations, but you go back to us, and we can tell because you believe in Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai. Now, today's lesson, I want to go into a video regarding the Acapulco slave trade. Now, this video is on a couple of different brothers' pages, but I got the video from GMS Testimonials Visions 4, and it says a Filipina testimony on being a Hebrew Israelite, and through the spirit, when you watch her speak, when you listen to her speak and you watch her, a man in risk, you can tell that, she's one of our people, man. You can tell that, you can see the spirit on her, and our people are scattered. And actually, this woman, she may be a part of those, a scattering of the 10 large tribes, man. The scattering of Gad, because she's going to go into it, when we focus on the slave trade, even when you focus on Deuteronomy 28 and 68, what gets overlooked is that it wasn't just Judah thrown into captivity. Now we had to bear the brunt of that particular curse. Absolutely. Why? Because we're the top tribe. Okay, Judah is the top tribe, but that does not mean that the other tribes didn't have to go through the same situation or didn't experience the same hardship. Just like now, it ain't just so-called Negroes in hardcore in the ghetto and slave in the ghetto and disenfranchised. A lot of the the rest of the tribes go through the same thing in North, Central, and South America. Because this we kind of focus on America a lot because this is going to be the place of the great deliverance. Real quick, before I start this lesson, I'll get that. This is just the book of Jeremiah, chapter 16, verse 14. Okay, Jeremiah 16, verse 14. Jeremiah 16 and 14. It says, "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai, that it shall no more be said, the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai, the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he hath driven them. And I will bring them again into their own. I'll bring them again into their land, Slaki, into their land that I gave unto their fathers." So yeah, America is going to be the place of great deliverance, but you also going to have Israelites being delivered from around the world in these different places in which they were scattered into, and they're living in. And this woman, she believed in Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai. Now I don't know the whole doctrine of that particular camp she following, her and her husband follow, but what I do know is that she used the Lord's name several times in this. She's, actually she's speaking about what she's going through, but her head's covered, and she seems sincere. All right. But she had mentioned something and I looked it up. That's why this lesson is entitled Acapulco Slave Trade. And the Acapulco slave trade, it involved indigenous people from the Americas being brought to the Philippines as slaves, man. And you had the Judites there too. That's why you got a section of Negritos in the Philippines, man. And like she even said it. Salaki, she even said it. She said not all Filipinos are Israelites, man, but it's a great number of them. And that's the same thing the apostles and the elders teach us, hey, look, man, Israel, we're as the sand as the sea. Even if they tried to get rid of all of us, they couldn't, because we're everywhere. All right. So it says, I'm trying to find out about Negritos. Slock it. So yeah, Negrito. Yeah. This is and she speaks about that. And it's not just the Negritos, because you got Jake just there, man. You got Gadites over there. You got Issacharites over there. A lot of them Filipinos could be Issacharites, man. All right? And so I want to play a little bit of this. Let me turn off this background music real quick. I want to play a little bit of this just to give you an understanding. And I'm not well versed in it. I'm still doing research on it. So hopefully I find some more in-depth research about it. But what I did find, I wanted to share, okay? And I thought that it would be edifying to share this, man. You know, our people are everywhere. So again, I'll finish it off with Jeremiah 2 and 15. But the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands, whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave their fathers. And that's right. He's going to bring us home. We're going back to Israel, man. All right. We as an entire nation. And that's why when you read out and when you read in Revelation, the book of Revelation, chapter 7, verse 9, this is the reason why you have that mixed multitude. All right. Revelation 7 and 9. It says the multitude from the tribulation, right? Because all of us are going to be going through it, man. But the elect going to be saved out of that, as well as the elect in the primary place of deliverance, as well as around the world. You're going to have Israelites being delivered. And they're not going to look like John Shaft. They're not going to look like John Leguizamo. They're going to look like this woman. It says a multitude, it says Revelation 7 and 9. After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number. All nations and kindreds, a people and tongue stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. So they had that righteousness, and they had that palm, which represents peace, because that's what the Lord is bringing to the nation of Israel. But this is that great multitude of a number of all nations, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and tongues and people. That's right, because you're going to have Israelites, you know, that speak fluent Filipino, that don't even speak English. You're gonna have Israelites looking like them tall ass Ubangi niggas over there in Africa, man. You're gonna have Israelites looking like the so-called white man. You're gonna have Israelites looking like the so-called Jews. Slocky. What's going on? And can brothers let me know if we still on? I say my thing timed out. I don't know what's going on. Let me know we still on. We still live. All right. But Slocky. I'm just looking at the comment board. Oh, kind. Brother said call to wild, ate the water, Akim. And shalom to all you Akim that's on the comment board. So I want to play a little bit of this video, and then I'll go into what I found. And this won't be a long lesson, but again, I'll try to do more in-depth research in regarding this. So let me play this right here.
And we were studying Hebrew Israelites. A lot of what you hear is so-called Black, so-called Mexicans, so-called Native Americans. And what people don't know, and what's dear and near to my heart, is that, you know, some Filipinos are Native Americans. We were not brought here willingly. There is an Acapulco slave trade, Mexicans and Filipinos on the same boats, brought over to the United States. A lot of Filipinos were here in cages, in, you know, some of the same lands as, you know, our so-called Indians, enslaved, called savages. called negritos, those, which means little blacks. So there's a huge history of the original Filipinos that most people don't know about. And so thankfully, the Most High allowed us to find the avenues to search out. And that's how, we came about to know. I'm not saying all Filipinos are Israelites, but there are a great number of Israelite Filipinos. Our congregation, True Nation Israelite Congregation, even has a True Nation congregation in the Philippines, headed up by Zabad. All praises to the Most High, leading a small congregation in the Philippines for those who have searched out their fathers and who know and allowed that spirit to come over them, that are following the commandments, that are, following our laws, statutes, and commandments. Yes, and all.
Yeah, so I'm slacking.
Already, they're 15 hours ahead of us, so they're.
Yeah, so here it is. You got Israelite. This Israelite thing is on fire, man. And I know it's a church in the Philippines where the pastor, he teaches the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai when he teaching the scriptures. And they be singing songs to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. You got brothers everywhere. You got brothers that are affiliated with their particular group, our group, brothers all over. You got Jake is everywhere, man. And, hey, that could be another reason why Esau wants to get rid of the vast majority of the people on the earth, except the people whom he think he vetted enough to know that, hey, you're not one of them. Because he wants to get rid of us, man. But you're not going to get rid of us. Just like you can't even count us, man. The Lord said, what? We are as the sand of the sea. Slack it. This is Hosea. Yep. Hosea 1 and 10. I'll start at 9. This is Hosea 1 and 9. It says, then said the Most High, call his name, Lord me, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. It says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God, man. That's right. So that place, primarily that place is in America. But that sentiment can be sent around the whole world because you got Israelites in these other nations and they don't even realize, or some of them do realize, hey, that they go back to us. Okay, they go back to our people. We go back to the Israelites, and the tribes can be predominantly found in the Americas. But then you got the tribes scattered amongst these other nations that don't look like your stereotypical Negro, Latino, or Native American, man. Like she said, you got Gadites in the Philippines, man. You got a lot of Judites in the Philippines, man. Okay, just like you got a lot of all the tribes scattered everywhere. When the Spaniards went on that slave conquest, they didn't just stop at the Americas and say slavery just going to be something for the Americas. No, they took Jake back to Spain via the Seville slave trade. They took Jake to the Philippines and anywhere else via the Pacific slave trade. Man. Okay, like the brother said, Kazak said, there's a diaspora. Yep, I got that scripture on deck, so I'll bring it out. Romans 8 and 16. The Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children or the sons of the living power, man. And you can see that spirit of our people on this woman. It's clear as day. Shit, if I wouldn't have guessed it, I'd have thought she was from the Northern Kingdom. You know what I mean? Or the Southern Kingdom. And guess what? Them people ready to learn. That's another reason why Esau wants to get rid of the internet, man. Because this word is spreading like wildfire. If one of the brothers can put it on a comment board, there's a scripture that says that their line is going out throughout the whole earth, man. Did not Yahweh Shai say that this word was going to be heard to the ends of the earth? Then the end shall come. And we're definitely in. We're getting ready to leave. We're getting ready to leave this place. We're getting ready to be delivered from this captivity. Okay? All right? So this is the brother, He put it up. The GMS in his likeness. I don't get it. GMS in his likeness posted it, and a brother Kazak posted it as well. Psalms 19:4. Their line is going out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. And them have he set a tabernacle for the sun. And that line is the word of Yahweh Shem Shai. And guess what did it? The apostles, the elders, the brothers on down, and then the internet, the YouTube, the unicorn, man. Shit, that's how a lot of us learned it. I live in Hawaii. That's where I heard the word at. It was no Israelites standing up out there doing the work before not that I knew of, that was telling us who we were. I heard it on the internet first through the spirit of power Yahweh Shem Shai, and then was commanded to go out there and do the work. Then you got IUIC out there. I think they stood up around the same time too, because one of the dudes I ran into, like in the beginning when I started doing the work, you know. Okay, so hold on, Slakia. Through the spirit. Okay, so but how did I find out about this word? Through the internet, man. Through that line. Okay, through the unicorn. Through the prophets, man. Start out with the apostles. Brother GMS in his likeness, John 10:27. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. That's right. Verse 28. And I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. Right, the elect can't be taken out of the Lord's hand. It don't matter what you look like. See, the Edomites, what they did was when they took us over, they created different factions, or different ethnic groups, not nationalities, just nationalities, but ethnic groups. They broke the people down into ethnic groups, right? And then they said, well, this is who you are. This is who you are. You know, a lot of the names our people have, they come from Edomites. Look, these people that's in the Philippines, that was not the name of that island or that place prior to the Spaniards, some Edomite Spaniards coming over there, man. And I think at the time, King Philip II, he was actually an Israelite. He was a Jake. He looked like a Jake. But it don't matter. They didn't look at them people as like their people, so they took them over, you know. And I was gonna make a point. Okay, so at the end of the day, you got Jakes all over this place, man. You know, and that's why the Lord also said this, and the book of Isaiah, chapter 25, verse 7. The book of Isaiah 25, verse 7, man. And the longer you study and understand, and the spirit of Yahweh Shah is working with you, this truth is gonna extend. It expands. It's going to expand. You're going to know more and more and more, because there's a lot of people don't know. This is Isaiah 25:7. Isaiah 25:7. He will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. Because there is a covering cast over all people. There is a veil that's spread over all nations, man. I just want to look at that definition for covering cast. Okay. The meaning of a covering cast, I'll just look it up in the blue letter. Yeah, that word for covering cast, I think it's two words, not compound words. So a covering, the word for covering is in the Hebrew, latas, which is covering or enveloped. Yeah, and the people of the nations, they're enveloped in the Edomite culture, man. You are what the Edomite said. And that word for veil, the Hebrew word there is masakwa, which is pouring libation, a covering, a molten image and molten gods. Yeah, because the Lord destroying these idols too in our sight of us with his word, showing us that they don't exist. That covering cast, that veil, a covering cast, a veil. It says pouring over a fusion of metal by implication of libation, i.e., a league, concretely a coverlet covering molten image, man. Yeah. Okay. So at the end of the day, through the spirit, as we get closer and closer to, I termed it Freedom Day. You know, it's not doctrine, and I just call it Freedom Day. The day when Yahweh Shai returns with his heavenly angels and deliver his holy elect. You know, that's Freedom Day. When Freedom Day comes, we're gonna be delivered from everywhere, man. From everywhere. So just going in a little bit about the Acapulco slave trade. Well, she already gave the definition of Greedo in there. This is I went to this thing called 15-minute history, and it's something called the Trans-Pacific slave trade. Because you've heard of the Trans-Atlantic slave trade. I'm sure you probably heard of the Trans-Saharan slave trade. Well, guess what? There was a Trans-Pacific slave trade. All right. And it says right here, at the height of the Spanish Empire, the Manila Galleon, an annual flotilla between Manila and Acapulco, which that's Mexico, was considered the lifeline of Spain's economy, bringing silver from the mines of New Spain to the markets of Asia. So they were bringing all that. They were bringing the goods from the Americas, Central America, right? And they were taking it over to the East Asian area, man, the Pacific Asian market, man, and they were slinging it, man. On a reverse trip, the galleons would be loaded with Asian luxury goods, and the same thing happened to Judah. On that reverse trip, items would be loaded onto boats. Slaves will be brought to as well, and they will be brought to the Americas. They will be dumped off there, and then they will put goods and ship it back to England, man. It's the same thing that was happening, and that's why you Edomite nations gonna fucking pay, man. All of y'all, it ain't just the American so-called white man or the British so-called white man. You Dutch, you Spaniards, you Germans, you gonna get dealt with, man. You Edomites. The Lord Yahweh Shai is going to get you, man. You're going to be dealt with, man. Because we all suffering, man. But anyway, it says, on the reverse trip, the galleons would be loaded with Asian luxury goods, such as spices, silk, and slaves. This episode presents a micro-history of the Trans-Pacific slave trade through the lens of Diego de la Cruz, a Chino slave, which we're going to get into that too, because that's what they were. Remember we said we're going to be called by proverbs and bywords. This is a proverb and a byword, man. And this happened to our people in the Philippines, man. Asian slaves in colonial Mexico, from the Chinos to the Indians, man. And they don't talk about this. It says, I'll go to this real quick. It says, during the late 16th and 17th centuries, so that's about 1500s and the 1600s, countless slaves from the cultural diverse communities in the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia journeyed to Mexico on the ships of the Manila Galleon. Upon arrival in Mexico, they were grouped together and categorized as Chinos. Let me see if I got any more on there. They were grouped together and they were categorized as Chinos. Their experience illustrates the interconnectedness of Spain's colonies and the reach of the crown, which brought people together from Africa, the Americas, Asia, and Europe. And they ain't bring people together like it was a goddamn get-along gang, man. You put them people in captivity, man, and left them there. But guess what? We multiplied there. Asia and Europe in a historically unprecedented way. In a time, Chinos and Mexico came to be treated under the law as Indians. becoming indigenous vassals of the Spanish crown in 1672. The implication of this legal change were enormous. As Indians, rather than Chinos, they could no longer be held as slaves. Tatalina Sejas tracks Chino's complex journey from the slave market in Manila to the streets of Mexico City. So here it is. Here it is. You got Filipinos that was in slave markets, bro. Slave markets, man. Being treated just like Judah, just like Gad, Judah, the so-called Negro, Gad, the so-called indigenous Native American of Americas, Issachar, the so-called Mexicans. We suffered this, man. And then you get people like Vocab Malone that want to say, well, when they talk about Deuteronomy 28, they talk about if you're not black and if you haven't suffered the transatlantic slave trade, it ain't about being black, man. It's just the fact that, guess what? It's the fact that that's a major prophecy. The transatlantic slave trade, sub-Saharan slave trade, the trans-Pacific slave trade, those were monumentous things. That wasn't something small. That wasn't something light. I don't care how diminutive Esau tried to make it. That wasn't something light. That was something major in the world, man. You know what I mean? Because it had never been done before, especially to a people like us. In that sense, it says, in doing so, she's challenging commonly held assumptions about the uniformity of the slaves experienced in America, in the Americas, man. Right? Because if you watch TV, you these damn movies, you would assume that it was just Judah enslaved Negroes, so-called African Americans in captivity, but that's not true. So let me play this real quick.
Slaves coming on the galleon ships, but missionary organizations that set up there.
Even today, the Philippines is a long ways away, but in the 16th century, it was an incredible distance. So how was it connected to the rest of the empire, and how was it managed?
Some historians have described the Manila Galleon as the umbilical cord that connected Manila and the Philippines to Mexico and the Americas. The galleons are these huge ships that sail between Acapulco and Manila almost every year for roughly 250 years until 1815. And the galleons brought silver from Mexico to the Philippines, and they returned from the Philippines with all these exotic luxury goods from China and other parts of Asia. And as you said, that voyage is really long. It's hard to imagine the trip from Acapulco to Manila was 2 or 3 months in duration, and the return trip could take 6 months. So, yeah.
Long trip
A long
to
time.
make.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned that some of the goods going back and forth between Asia and America were things like spices, silks, porcelain. Since we're talking about the slave trade out of Asia, are we to also presume then that there were slaves coming on these galleon ships as well?
Yes, there were definitely slaves coming on the galleon ships, but I think we tend to focus on the porcelains and jewels and spices and forget that slaves also made that journey. So Manila was a slave society. Slavery was very common in Manila, as it was in other cities in Spain's global empire. One contemporary observer guessed about 1/3 of the population of Manila in the early 1600s were slaves. So slavery is very common in Manila. I think an interesting thing, though, about slavery in the Philippines that maybe was different from slavery in other parts of the Americas was that Manila's slave population was ethnically diverse. So we do see Africans enslaved in the Philippines.
Wow.
And they often come from an Indian Ocean slave trade, from the Portuguese colonies in East Africa. But we also
So
see
here it
people
is.
from
They
India.
made it around the world because a lot of people don't even talk about the East African slave trade, where the Portuguese were selling jade and the Arabs too into India. And then they would go from India and they would go to the Philippines and anywhere else the Spaniards had a hold in the world, man.
Enslaved in Manila. They're often contemporary observer guessed about 1/3 of the population of Manila in the early 1600s were slaves. So slavery is very common in Manila. I think an interesting thing, though, about slavery in the Philippines that maybe was different from slavery in other parts of the Americas was that Manila's slave population was ethnically diverse. So we do see Africans enslaved in the Philippines.
Wow.
And they often come from an Indian Ocean slave trade from the Portuguese colonies in East Africa. But we also see people from India enslaved in Manila. They're often described as Bengalis.
Oh, wow.
And also the Spaniards themselves, for a lot of the time that Manila was a colony, the Spanish were fighting wars with Muslim states in the southern Philippines and present-day Malaysia area. And when the Spanish would defeat these enemies in war, they would often enslave these people.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, you see how diverse the slave trade was. But again, the House of Judah took the head of it, but we all took it, man. All the tribes got beat and torn down and taken over. But, again, there is some diversity, especially when you go to the Pacific and when you go to the East, man. And I just want to focus on, the so-called Filipino slaves, the Israelites over there, in this lesson. But it says right here, the slave trade in Mexico. It says the first slaves to arrive in Mexico accompanied their masters in the enormous task of the conquest. They came from the islands of Cuba, to which they had been brought under royal license several decades after the discovery of America. These first Negroes arriving with Cortez and Narvaez were the vanguard of a greater number brought as domestic slaves to a recently established viceroyalty of the New Spain and the Spanish settlers who poured into the land. The majority of such slaves were of immediate insular origin, and it is possible that many of them were transported to the New World under the license granted by the governor in 1518. And that's why we know that slaves came over here in 1526. And it says, but they had mentioned 1528. And it says, and the essential to the Germans, Inger and Saller in 1528. The failure of these enterprises determined very shortly that the resumption of the royal license granted in the individuals from the time forward to immediate source of it says the Negroes was the port of the southern Spain. Following documents will illustrate this trade by individual license. I'm not going to read all of that. Well, it says right here, Hernando Perez registered a Negro slave man and a Negro slave woman whom he transported in the ship by virtue of the cedula of His Majesty dated Oceana, March 11, 1531. The man slave consigned to Pedro de Espinosa, and the woman slave is said to slave to the said Juan de la Casanida. All these slaves thus registered appear to have been appraised by the lieutenant. Man, you motherfuckers gonna pay, man. It's gonna be and then this is the thing, like Jake in the world, they don't understand what's happening. They don't understand the big picture. And you got people like Vocab Malone that comes in there and try to weasel his way up in here and try to make a fight for the heathen. Like they going, nah, man, slavery coming back in a big way. It's here now, but it's gonna be a reverse. We're gonna be the slavers. We're gonna be the masters, the slavers, and we're gonna be the masters. Certain heathen nations gonna be the slavers. They're gonna do the work, and they're gonna grab up you. Oh, it's gonna be nice, man. Anyway, I don't want to digress. It says the Indian Ocean slave trade. The Indian Ocean slave trade, sometimes known as the East African slave trade or Arab slave trade, was a multi-directional slave trade and has changed over time. Africans, these are Israelites, were sent as slaves to the Middle East, to the Indian Ocean islands, including Madagascar, to the Indian subcontinent, and later to the Americas. So we focus a lot on the transatlantic slave trade because them Edomites, the devil, man, they did a job on us, man. But all you nations gonna pay, man. Ain't no way. So it says I was reading through this right here. Spanish slavery in the Philippines. It says Spaniards considered it illegitimate. Spaniards considered it legitimate to enslave non-Christian captives from wars and trade them legally in the past. This is because they did not consider this an uncivilized and unchristian act because they believed that men were not created equal and the inferior man may be ruled by the superior one. So here it is, even now. You got these Christians like, okay, I'm on, I keep bringing this devil up because you want to talk about how we all equal and how in the sight of God and how, no, we not. We're not all equal in the sight of Yahweh Shem Shah. We're not all equal. We're not even all equal in the sight of the Edomite or in the sight of these other men. And you Christians, you trying to push this vibration of love everybody. You need to love. We need to show God love. But wait a minute, y'all are the same motherfuckers that was enslaving people and destroying them. And when so-called people weren't Edomite Christians, what would you do? You call them inferior people. And you took it upon yourself to say that you're supposed to rule over these people because they are inferior to you. This is Christianity for you, man. However, it says, however, we're anticipated to show sympathy to people suffering, and this made some masters free their slaves. Yeah, right. A lot of them apprenticed their slaves so they could still work under the supervision once they were freed. So if you had to still work for the devil, you're not freed, man. And that's what's happening now. You don't have hardcore slavery going on. You got a whole bunch of people out here being apprentices, and they working for the slave masters, Edomites, corporate industries, and all the rest of these devils, and even these other nations under their supervision. So you weren't free. To be free is to be free completely of the bonds that are set upon you and the ones that call themselves masters upon you. To be free is to be sovereign, man. And if you ain't sovereign, you ain't free. It says there were two major types of slaves, the esclavos, Negroes who were African, purchased from Portugal. Those are Israelites. And esclavos blancos who were Moros taken from wars. So those are those Muslim jakes, the Muslim jakes that were taken in the war that they was fighting, that the lady was talking about. They were usually sold in public auctions. And is not this in the scriptures? Is not this in the scriptures, man? This is Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 3, verse 1. It says, for behold, yep, in those days and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they scattered among the nations and parted my land. And that's a part of that. That's a part of that. You know, they scattered our people across the land, you know, and they were selling Jake like hotcakes, man. Niggas was the iPhone of the day, man. You know, we were the iPhone of the day, right? It says, they were usually sold in public auctions from both the middle and the upper class bought them, as well as the clergy, you know. So this is deep, man. This is real deep. This is a Manila Gelon with Galleons, so like Manila Galleon. The Manila Galleon were Spanish trading ships which for 2.5 centuries linked the Spanish crown's viceroyalty of New Spain, based in Mexico City, with her Asian territories collectively known as Spanish East Indies across the Pacific Ocean. Ships made 1 or 2 round trip voyages per year between the ports of Acapulco and Manila. The name of the galleon changed to reflect the city that the ship sailed from. The term Manila Galleon can also refer to the trade route itself between Acapulco and Manila, which lasted from 1565 to 1815. The Manila Galleon sailed to the Pacific for 250 years, bringing to America's cargoes of luxury goods such as spice, porcelain, in exchange for New World silver. The route also fostered cultural exchange that shaped the identities and cultures of countries involved. And that's why you got Israelites scattered amongst the Philippines. You got Israelites that were foreign Israelites that were scattered amongst Jake in Mexico. Shit, man, you might be looking at a so-called Mexican and not realizing, man, you really go back. You are a people, but you really leftovers from the Filipinos and Jake mixing and mingling, brought over there in captivity, man. Because the dumb people, them Israelites from the Philippines were taken out to Mexico. Did they leave and go back to the Philippines? Nah, they was there. They dealt with each other, and over time and process of time, and they're there, man. I didn't know this is heavy, man. It's heavy, man. Because a lot of times you felt being a so-called black person in America, and all you hear about is slavery, when they entertaining themselves about it, right? And they make it sound like it was just a so-called black thing. And then you realize in its truth that it was not. You had the Gadites, the Issacharites, they don't talk about that much, but it happened. There are books on it. They were chained to these, just like Judah was chained. They died on them ships, man. They went through hell. They went through a seasoning process. That same thing, bro. Man, this is Ezekiel 37 and 21. And say unto them, thus saith the Lord power, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whether they be gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. So here it is. We're in every nation. We're scattered amongst all the heathen. But the Lord is going to bring us up out of that. Those that are slotted for salvation. All right? Yahweh Shem Shah is going to deliver the Israelites from North America primarily, but also from around the world, man. Okay? It says, and say unto them, thus saith the Lord power, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whether they be gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. Right? Okay, this is Baruch chapter 3, verse 8. Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us. So wherever we at, that we were scattered there, for a reproach. Chino, nigger, spick, wetback, Indian, all of that. People look at us like destroyed people, a no people, a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from the Lord power. That's right. And it's crazy because nobody was exempt in this, man. None of the tribes were exempt. I don't care if you see Jake so-called doing well in this world, man. A lot of them people that might be at the top as so-called Negroes could be terrorists, man, or just sellouts. But as a majority of a people, we're in a downtrodden space, man. But that was for our iniquities. This is Baruch chapter 2, verse 30. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. And you see that in this video. You got brothers over there in the Philippines, part of Great Millstone, part of IUIC, sure, this other group that they got going on. But nonetheless, them Israelites, they're remembering themselves, man. And they calling on the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah. All right? They believe in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah. They rehearsing the righteous acts of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah. This is Judges 5 and 11. Judges 5 and 11. They that be delivered from the noise of the archers in the place of drawing water, there shall they rehearse the righteous acts of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Shai, even the righteous acts toward the inhabitants of his village in Israel. Then shall the people of the Lord go down into the gates. And that's what we're doing. So they was, I think she said at the time of this video, they were celebrating, I think, first fruit, the Feast of First Fruits, man. And you don't see every Filipino doing that. And guess what? Pork and abominable foods is prevalent in the Philippines. But you got brothers down there refraining from that shit. Why? Because they practicing the law, statute, and commandments one towards another, man. And they fear in Yahweh Bashem Shai. Okay, and this is these are some excerpts from a book called the Smith. It's from the Smithsonian Perspective: The Other Slavery, and it says in the Western Hemisphere, the very mention of the word slavery brings to mind images of Africans transported across the Atlantic, transported across the Atlantic. And that's right. And that's like I said earlier, you got that. That's what you think of when you think of the slaves. You think of Judah going into slavery, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi going into slavery. But you don't realize that the Israelites went there, man. The other Israelites too went in there. Transported across the Atlantic, sugar plantations in the Caribbeans, or the American Civil War. African slavery was surely a defining aspect of European colonialism in the Americas, but it was not the only one. Native Americans, listen to this, Native Americans, let me see if I can make this a little bigger so you can see it yourself. Native Americans were subject to a parallel system of bondage as degrading and vast as African slavery, a system that has nonetheless remained hidden and poorly understood. So all you jakes that talk about the Northern Kingdom ain't Israelites because they didn't go through what we went through, you need to shut up, man. You need to quit that because they did go through it, man. It's just that the tribe Judah, Benjamin, Levi, it was just more documented. So vocab alone, man, you gotta shut your mouth, man. And all the Americas is has our people in it, man, from different places too, and we still scattered amongst some other places. But hey, this modern day Egypt, America, man, it got all of us here, man. Anyway, it says Native Americans were subjected to a parallel system of bondage as degrading and vast as African slavery, a system that has nonetheless remained hidden and poorly understood. In our hemisphere, indigenous slavery occurred in every major area, both predating the outlasting its African counterpart. During the 4th century, that's right, because we talk about Judah being the first slave. No. The Northern Kingdom was the first ones to go into captivity from the Americas, man. From once they started getting captured, but you had slavery going on anyway, from Portugal back to Spain. They were dragging Jake. We were going down, man. And they were dragging Jake from West Africa into Portugal, Spain, and sending them all out there. And the Israelites that were living in Europe, that were falling out of power, they were putting them in captivity. You can read about that with Oliver Cromwell, what he did to the Ireland and Scotland, man. They sent them over to the Americans in captivity. See, it says indigenous slavery occurred in every major area, both predating and outlasting its African counterpart. During the 4 centuries between the arrival of Columbus and the beginning of the 20th century, some 2.5 to 5 million native people were enslaved. All European empires took part in this human traffic, and now they want to act like they fighting human trafficking. Nigga, please. The English, the French, the Dutch, the Portuguese, because Spain came to control the richest and most densely populated regions of the Americas at the same time that it lacked African colonies and thus access to African peoples. It emerged as the greatest enslaver of indigenous Americans. So you Spaniards gonna pay to extract the hemisphere's wealth. Spain made use of the most abundant labor at its disposal. Ironically, beginning in the Columbian times, the Spanish crown prohibited indigenous slavery except in few circumstances. In 1542, it banned the practice entirely. So from here on, no Indian can be made into a slave under any circumstances, including wars, rebellions, or when ransomed from other Indians, unlike African slavery, which remained legal and sanctioned by empires around the world for centuries. The enslavement of Native Americans was against the law, yet this categorical prohibition did not prevent Spanish colonists from taking enslaved indigenous people all over the hemisphere and even importing them from the Philippines. Ooh, I even know this is in there. Listen to this. and even importing them from the Philippines. Well, guess what, man? They're my people, man. I'm gonna start adding that in through this. Well, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna ask the apostles and elders. I'm gonna run it past them. But hey, so-called Filipinos, man. Some of you so-called Filipinos are our people, man. It's right there. I didn't make this up. I didn't write this. That's a spirit. You got Jakes in the Philippines thrown into captivity, man. Let me read that again. That was big. Yet this categorical prohibition did not prevent Spanish colonists from taking enslaved indigenous peoples all over the hemisphere and even importing them from the Philippines to get around the royal prohibition. Spanish colonists and entrepreneurs and collusionists with some royal officials resorted to legal subterfuge, carved out exceptions and devised cataclysmic labor and arrangements such as encomiendas, repartmentos, nobrarias, convict leasing. And look, we went through that after slavery was over. We went through the same thing in America. That convict leasing system, the encomia, all of that. Debt peonage, and many others. Legal obfuscation allow operators to continue forcing Native Americans to toil while giving them minimal or no compensation, and is one of the reasons we still struggle today to recognize colonial enslavement practices from what they were. Indigenous slavery long predated the arrival of Europeans in the Americas. Yeah, just like it long predated in Africa and in Europe. Jake was enslaving each other, but that ain't no reason for you to touch our people. As far back as we can peer into pre-contact monuments, codices, and archaeological evidence, as well as the early European accounts, we learn about indigenous Americans enslaving one another. Hey, well, I have to say that our people were. It is a scripture. I'm trying to think of it. It says, they wait for people. It says they wait. It says, among my people are found the wicked. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Among what do y'all bunch of y'all shot? Yeah. Um. Um. Jeremiah 5:26. Hey, the water, brother. The water. For among my people are found wicked men. They lay wait as he that setteth snares. They set a trap, they catch men. There it is. And that's our people did that. But that ain't no excuse for you Edomites to put your hands on our people. Huh? And it says, enslaving one another. The Maya and the Aztec took captives to use as sacrificial victims. So you were killing our people, you were taking Jake, and then you were murdering them to idols, man. And that's why exactly what happened to our people fucking happened, man. You niggas is crazy, man. The Iroquois, which these are Native Americans, waged mourning wars on neighbors to avenge and replace their dead. Yep. So they were gangbanging back in the day. The same thing they do in the day. Native groups along the North Pacific coast finalized elite marriages by exchanging enslaved people, and so on. These practices of bondage were embedded in specific cultural contexts. Europeans tapped into them and went on to commodify and expand them in ways that would have been unimaginable. That's right. So they saw Jake fighting each other, and that's what they do, man. They sit back, watch you, and then they commodify whatever it is that you're doing. Because Jake wasn't slaving each other to the point where like it was a worldwide thing. They were making all kinds of money. No, you niggas was fighting with each other. You would kill each other, destroy each other, take each other captive, and that's the reason why that you break. And then doing all these things, you were breaking the law, statutes, and commandments. Hey, the scripture says that if you steal a man and he be found in your hands, hey, you get put to death, and that's one of our laws. They don't just go for Esau, Edom doing what he did. which it does now. But hey, that's why we suffered the way we suffered, because we were doing this wickedness, man. And all Esau did was commodify it. I'll give a good example of that. All that rap, that gangster, all rap culture, hip hop culture, all that gangster shit you niggas talk about, like you little niggas running around here talking about you drillers and you killers. Guess what? Esau commodified that shit. He made a genre of music that pushes that vibration so you can continue to do that shit. You niggas put mask on your face and you run around this bitch acting like you on demon time. And then what Esau do? He got a jail system waiting for your bitch ass. He gonna take you, isolate you, get you up out them neighborhoods that you done ran into the ground, put your people out, and he gonna come in and buy it up and do whatever he want in it because he just commodified what you was doing. You want to be a whore, you want to be a slut, Esau commodified that. He see what you were doing, and he put it on a big scale. Man, you devils gonna pay. It says, man, I'm just taken back by this quote right here. It says, yet this category of prohibition did not prevent Spanish colonists from taking enslaved indigenous people all over the hemisphere and even importing them from the Philippines, man. That's crazy. I didn't even know that was there. But anyway, it says these practices of bondage were embedded in specific cultural contexts. Europeans tapped into them and went on to commodify and expand them in ways that would have been unimaginable in earlier times. By the 17th century, Mapuche captives from southern Chile were marched to the port of Valparaiso, and shipped all the way to Peru. Where's Valparaiso at? Slovakia. Valparaiso. Valparaiso is in Chile, and it was shipped to Peru. So Valparaiso, I don't know what it is. The distance. Chile, Valparaiso. Okay. So Chile, how far is Chile to Peru? Chile, Slovakia. Chile to Peru. Oh wow. Look, so they went from here all the way up here. Yeah, from here all the way up here. But they ain't our people. You out of your goddamn mind. Anyway, it says Mapuche captives from southern Chile were marched to the port of Valparaiso and shipped all the way to Peru. Unpaid Apache laborers from northern Mexico were taken as far south as Cuba and as far north as Canada, and enslaved people from Asia were transported across the Pacific to work in cities and mines in North America. Over the centuries, forms of enslavement changed and character culture, blah, blah, blah. Oh, man, I'm going to save this. This is good. This is a good resource. Man, this shit is crazy. I didn't even know that. I did not know this. This is crazy. I had did something about Seville, Spain. Well, I looked it up. And, this is the kind of called the reverse slave trade. Seville, Spain, a legacy of indigenous slavery. It says, standing outside Seville Cathedral, I debated whether or not to enter. As it was Christmas season, crowds of locals and tourists poured in and out of the sanctuary. What did the Taino make of this place? And Tainos are Israelites. Okay. They were probably hungry and exhausted after their epic voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. The indigenous people from the Caribbean had sailed from Haiti near the end of 1495 and arrived in Spain a few weeks later. Then was long march from the port and land to Seville. There were about 200 Tainos in the group, chained together. They were brought, and look, the same thing. You shall put a yoke of iron on your neck. Slaves, hey, they did the walk too. Just like you Jakes did the walk in Africa, man. Them to the ocean. Same way that yoke was put on you, man. The same thing, man. Man, the Lord did this, man. The Lord was merciful, man. I mean, he was mad, but he was merciful because he brought us together, man. And I'm gonna end it off with that scripture in a second. I want to end it off with that scripture in a second about how we was gonna come together in the end. We were all gonna come down. The same thing was happening, man. The same thing was happening to Jake. And it says they were brought to Spain by Christopher Columbus to be sold in the slave market of Seville, indigenous slaves in Spain. This is not the kind of information that appears in tourist brochures and websites on Seville. I too had to come to a marvelous city to admire the legacy of Moorish rule, which was the Israelites that were ruling. The Alcazar Palace, the winding streets, and the cathedrals, which started out life as a mosque. My tour was self-guided, meaning I wandered around following anything in any street. It says Seville, Cobra, Cadiz were the three largest slave markets. Seville, Cordoba, and Cadiz were the three largest slave markets in Spain in the 1500s. It says that slavery was ancient and a holdover from millennia old Muslim rule in the country. Yeah, because we did put them Edomites in captivity, man. Hell yeah. And took their women. In those days, the slaves came from Europe, Africa, and Asia. The Taino were different. They were the first people from the New World to walk along Seville Street and straight to the auctioning block. And I ain't got to read no more on this. I'll do another lesson on that later, Lord willing. I want to end it off with this scripture right here in the book of Second Esdras. Okay. What is it? Second Esdras. It says, there they would rehearse the righteous. I'm sorry, follow the laws and which they did not follow in their own land. Second Esdras 3 and Slaki. What you mean it cut both ways? Anyway, was it Second Esdras? I don't think it was Ecclesiasticus. It might be 2. So, Second Esdras chapter 2. I don't think it's Second Esdras chapter 2. Salaki. Yeah, Second Esdras 13, Salaki. Second Esdras 13. Second Esdras 13 and 40. This Second Esdras chapter 13, verse 40. Yep. Second Esdras 13 and 40. It says, let me just read a little bit up. Verse 39. And whereas thou sawest that he gathered together another peaceable multitude unto him. Verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Hosea, in the time of the king Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria, and led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and they came they to another land, and that was the Americas. All right. But they took this counsel amongst themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where no man dwelt. That's America. So yep, that's America. Yep. That they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. Yep. And it says, and they enter into the Euphrates, the narrow passages of the river. Okay. And for the Most High then showed signs for them, and they held still the flood till the waters were passed over. For through the country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And the same region is called Arsareth. This is America, the Americas. Then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come. And that's right. And the them that shall begin to come were the Israelites, the southern kingdom. So the northern kingdom was already over here, but then the southern kingdom came. Now all of Israel is over here. All right. Now all of Israel is over here. All the tribes, at least. Not all of Israel, but all the tribes. And this is I had a scripture just jumped in my head. Hopefully I get it back. Yeah, here it is. The Wadi Habashon shot. This is Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah. Was it 50 and 33? Jeremiah 50 and 33. Okay, it says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. So even even the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, or the civilian slave trade, we were all being oppressed together. While we were being taken over in West Africa and Europe, Jacob's being taken over here in the Americas and other places. And now we're here together and we're oppressed together. And none of these nations that kept us in captivity, especially the nation of Edom, want to let us go. They refuse to let us go, man. So, hey, I didn't mean to make this too long. I really hope it was edifying. A lot of information came out. It's a lot of information to take in, about an hour's worth. But I hope you brothers watch this video, and I hope you brothers do your own reply videos. If you got questions, hit the comment board, and we'll try to answer these questions as best as we can through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. So with that one, say all praise and honor and glory to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua Ba'Shem Wakar Kadash. I want to say double honor to the apostles and the elders, a great millstone for teaching his word in truth and sincerity, and for ruling well. And shalom to my fellow Ak. Keep pushing, keep striving. We're almost out of here. Hey, shalom.